The Chicago World's Fair of 1893 by Madison Freeman. In 1893, the United States population was estimated at 65 million people. At the same time, the Chicago World's Fair recorded 27.5 million visits and on its best day, drew more than 700,000 visitors. Everything about the fair was immense, occupying over 1 square mile and filled more than 200 buildings. George Washington Gale Ferris Jr. invented the Ferris wheel. The country considered his 264-foot-tall Ferris wheel an engineering marvel. The Ferris wheel alone saved the fair from financial ruin. There were many construction delays that caused a huge budget deficit, and when William Buffalo Bill Cody and his performers were denied their request to appear at the fair, Cody brought his Wild West extravaganza to Chicago anyway and set up right outside the fairgrounds. 2,160 people could ride the Ferris wheel at a time, and the fair charged 50 cents to ride, which was twice the cost of a fair ticket. It was so popular that it was moved to Chicago's North Side, where it stayed for 10 years. Ferris intended to rival the 1889 fair in Paris, whose highlight was the Eiffel Tower. Scores of workers had been hurt or killed in building the stream, and fire killed 15 more, their families consigned to poverty. After the Great Fire of 1871, Chicago became the nation's leader in commerce, manufacturing, and architecture. Chicago was rapidly expanding and the city was growing in all directions, and where it neared the lake, it grew skyward, increasing the value of the land within the area. But as the city got bigger, taller, and richer, it also became dirtier, darker, and more dangerous. Erik Larson, the author of The Devil in the White City, comments how smoke blackened the streets and at times reduced visibility to the distance of a single block. The ceaseless passage of trains, grip cars, trolleys, carriages, and hearses, all with ironclad wheels, produced a constant thunder that did not recede until after midnight. In poor neighborhoods, garbage mounded in alleyways and overflowed giant trash boxes that became banquet halls for rats and blue bottle flies. Billions of flies. The corpses of dogs, cats, and horses often remained where they fell. In January, they froze into disheartening poses, and in August, they ballooned and ruptured. Many ended up in the Chicago River, the city's main commercial artery. During heavy rains, river water flowed into a greasy plume far out into Lake Michigan, to the towers that marked the intake pipes for the city's drinking water. It was so easy to disappear. 1,000 trains entered or left in a day, and many brought single young women who had never even seen a city before. Jane Addams wrote, "Never before in civilization have such numbers of young girls been suddenly released from the protection of the home and permitted to walk unattended upon the city streets and to work under alien roofs." The women sought work as typewriters, stenographers, seamstresses, and weavers. Young women drawn to Chicago by the fair and by the prospect of living on their own had disappeared. Through all of this, the First National Bank had to place a warning in the local newspaper to inform female stenographers, "Our growing conviction that no thoroughly honorable businessman who is this side of dotage ever advertises for a lady stenographer who is blonde, is good-looking, is quite alone in the city, or will transmit her photograph. All such advertisements upon their face bear the marks of vulgarity, nor do we regard it safe for any lady to answer such unseemly utterances." Death came often. Someone could step from a curb and be killed by the Chicago Limited. Every day, on average, 2 people were destroyed at the city's rail crossings. Streetcars fell from drawbridges, horses bolted and dragged carriages into crowds. Fires took a dozen lives a day. There was diphtheria, typhus, cholera, and influenza, and there was murder. In the first 6 months of 1892, the city experienced nearly 800 violent deaths, 4 a day. Most were from robbery, argument, or sexual jealousy. Men shot women shot men, and children shot one another by accident. The rate at which men and women killed one another rose sharply throughout the nation, but especially in Chicago. Police found themselves without the manpower or expertise to manage the volume. Chicago elected its first constable in 1828, but police worked part-time and did not patrol. 9-day police were added in 1853 and managed traffic at depots and bridges. Erik Larson quotes a resident of Chicago. Next door was a police station. While at times there was considerable need of a police force in the Stockyards district, they had very little necessity for their appearance other than to ornament the landscape and see that the cows were not disturbed in their peaceful pastures. The job of the police, as they and the city officials saw it, was to maintain civil order, especially during periods of unrest. The 1890s was an interesting time period for Chicago. It experienced much death, but also much growth. None of that would have happened if it weren't for the flood of people coming to the city, whether it be for the World's Fair or for the vision of new opportunities.